Recently, a meeting was held by ANC 4B Commissioner Allison Brooks in response to a Change.org petition started by the organization Manor Park Friends. The organization was objecting to the development project that they felt should have retail in addition to residential units. But now the project is only slated for residential. The purpose of the meeting was to help communicate the timeline of this development project, including the various stages of ownership, and to hear directly from the community. Let's take a look.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Brooks. We are here tonight because we have called a community meeting to discuss the property at 71 Kennedy Street. When I became a commissioner in 2019, Coloma River already owned the property and had already submitted a proposal that included first floor retail and $2 of underground parking. At that time, they had not conducted any traffic studies or ground studies. And that's important because there's limited street parking for residents and businesses. Additionally, it has come to light that there's an underground water issue along Kennedy Street. I also need to point out that at one point, Coloma River owned 71 Kennedy Street, 201 Kennedy Street, 415, 429, 433, 5501 First Street, and 5412 First Street. The 400 block of Kennedy Street is not in my S&D. I can't control what happens there. But with regard to 71 Kennedy, 201 Kennedy Street, and 5501 First Street, those have been purchased, as well as 5412 by a different developer. But 5412 First Street has also been sold to someone other than Coloma River. Okay? So that brings us to case number 21103, which is in fact tied to case number 19897. Case number 21103 is an application for special exception relief. And what they're asking for is to have closed court relief and rear yard relief under the statutes. The project does not provide a rear yard where a 15-foot rear yard is normally required. The project features 2 closed courtyards, and therefore relief is needed to widen both of those courts. In reviewing an application for special exception relief, the zoning board's discretion is limited to a determination of whether the exception sought meets the requirement of the regulation. So that means when the zoning board meets, they're meeting about those 2 things and those 2 things only.
Hi, I'm Mark Hamlin, and I'm actually from the DC Office of Zoning, but we do work with the Office of Planning. No, that's okay.
So what is the zoning for this particular project that they will be considering?
So this project is mixed use 4, and so that is a moderate density zones, and that's where you can have retail and broad commercial, and that's what's contemplated for the area. And specifically, they're getting relief for their rear yard. They're required to have 15 feet, and I believe their application has none, and then they need closed court relief, and the courtyards aren't wide enough. It's based on how tall your building is. I think they need just over 16 feet, and they're going to provide, I think, 10 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 2 inches. And so that's what the board's going to be looking at.
So the board would have to consider, there's 2 instances where they're not sort of in line with zoning as
Right.
it relates to the courtyard and the other space. And you all will decide whether you allow that to happen despite them not being in line with the zoning. But as it relates to the retail and the commercial space, will they be deemed out of order for not having commercial retail space? Is it a shall or may?
It's a may.
Okay? Retail is not a part of the consideration of the application that was submitted. So your argument to require retail attached to this case is incongruent. Doesn't mean I don't understand what you want. It doesn't mean that we can't work to get more retail on First Street. It means those 2 things are incongruent. So on Kennedy Street, in this area, we have a mix of vertical residential and non-residential uses. We have buildings made up entirely of residential uses, like the one at 30 Kennedy. We have some that are entirely non-residential, like the office space down by the gas station, which will be the Center for Homeless Prevention. This project provides much needed housing, which includes affordable workforce housing. And the developer has indicated that approximately 37 units will be affordable at a 50% of median family income, and the project will also include 5 inclusionary zoning units at 80% of median family income. If their application to the DC Department of Housing and Community Development is successful, right? We can't assume it. Okay. Where possible, ANC4B has committed to and has always encouraged affordable housing. That doesn't make us anti-retail. We've never said that we're anti-retail, but we do want people to have an affordable and safe and comfortable place to live. In the very recent past, there was an article, I think it was in Urban Turf, that talked about the fact that RE1 will be appearing before zoning in April. That's scheduled for April 24th. Because this commission weighed in on the old order number, which was 19879, we are required to do one of 2 things. Actually, we're not required to do anything, quite honestly. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to bring this before the commission again. I don't have to put in another resolution. I could choose to do absolutely nothing. I could also choose to bring it before the commission in April, vote again on the exact same resolution that already received the support of every commissioner, and then whatever the outcome is of that new vote, then submit that to zoning again. But I have no requirement to submit a resolution for anything, ever. So the decision that needs to be made is, 1, do I do nothing? Do I do something? And what that something is. And so part of the reason that we're having this meeting tonight is to clear the air, to provide you with facts, and to hear from you to learn more about what it is you think and feel, so that then I can arrive at the conclusion of what it is that I want to do.
My name is Chris Benderev. I live at Longfellow up here. I can't say that I speak for everyone on the side of people who were very interested in having this meeting, but I do speak for a good number of them, and I just want to acknowledge a few things just first off. I think what's happening here, and I am not an expert on zoning, is that the plan was to have retail on the first floor. The developers asked for a modification. That was a big part of their ask last year. ANC approved that. Now I wish that I had been at that meeting and had pushed back on that, because I think a lot of people here, like myself, wish they did not vote, or I should say not vote to support it. And I think we have good reason to have some questions, at least, about RE1. They may not have Charles Parade, but they have a lot of some of the same players. And we just want to say that and kind of hope that you guys can hear us out and that we'll hear you out.
If it's okay, I'd like to add one little word that I think is important to your statement.
I just want to keep on
The
time.
first developer wanted retail. They no longer own the property. And I think that that's an important distinction, because you can't hold someone else accountable for what someone else wanted. That's like saying the person that owned the house before you wanted their bathroom to be purple, and so now your bathroom has to be.
I see your point. I don't think that's a perfect analogy.
It's probably not, but it is a
there's some
distinction.
similarity between the two
There is a
companies.
distinction.
So
You're misrepresenting the relationship.
Yes.
The
I don't
construction
think I am.
company,
Why don't we ask the owner?
The-
Why don't we
right.
ask
I know
everyone?
that the owners.
we've read all about it. The construction company and the architect, they're the same. They've done the original plans. And
They're
so
not
the same
owner.
people.
The architect is not the
There's-
owner.
The owner is the architect.
Charles Parade is not involved in this project. Hold on. Let me say this, and then we can just ask RE1, okay? Charles Parade, I don't know that any of you besides me and the councilwoman in this room have had a conversation with Charles Parade. If you've had a conversation with Charles Parade besides me and the councilwoman, would you raise your hand, please? And you're not the owner. Okay. You had a conversation with Charles Parade. Did you find him difficult?
Yeah, you were an asshole.
Okay, thank you. We agree.
Sorry, kids.
We agree, okay? We don't want to work with,
Charles Parade.
okay,
Well, we're working with his brother.
no, you're
And the
not.
same CEO, and the same architect, and the exact same
The
board of directors,
RE1
Columbia
is not
Capital,
a family
Martin
member of
It's the same, it's
Charles Parade.
two different
Now,
persons.
First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Mel Neguse. I met Charlie Parade about 1999. And I was one of those people like you that was actually hoodwinked. At the time, 71 Kennedy was proposed to me, as well as 201 Kennedy, and also other properties. It's not just me, there's other owners as part of developer RE1. Charles Parade is not part of developer RE1. You can believe whatever you want.
it's his
Charles Parade, it's not his project. I'm trying to tell you my commitment to the community and that my commitment to make sure that whatever properties we acquire, we don't just sit on it. I'm not a big developer. I'm a small developer. I'm a small businessman. We are committed to 71 Kennedy to develop that location. The reason we had to get rid of the commercial spaces, if you have done any project up and down Kennedy Street, there's a huge water issue.
So my concern is when I see RE1, and I see the same CEO, I see the same architect, I see another parade listed there, and then I see them taking away retail, and then I see that trash next to me all the time. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and it makes me worry that all we're doing is oh yeah, they sold it. I don't see any list of the sale. I don't see any document of the sale. I didn't see the property go for sale. It was an internal sale. Nobody saw it. I can't pull it up on anything to see what it sold for. I mean, it's one thing for me to tell my sister, hey, sis, I'm gonna sell you this property for $10, and then we'll do the same thing. Are you the owner of RE1?
I was never a CEO or affiliated with Coloma River.
Okay, but how many people in RE1 were affiliated with Coloma River?
RE1, let me.
No, of your board of directors, how many people from Coloma are on RE1?
I can answer that for you. RE1, developer RE1 LLC owns the property at 71 Kennedy. Okay. There's
How many
me.
people are-
Hold on. There's me, and there's two other people.
Chad?
One of them name is developer Mulugeta Tesfakiros. Let me tell you. Mulugeta Tesfakiros, Mel Negusi, that's me, and Solomon Desta are the three owners of developer RE1 LLC. Okay.
And how many of those were affiliated with Coloma?
So you also own.
No, none of the three people are affiliated with Coloma River.
Or have
I'm
been
not.
in the past?
None of these three people have ever been affiliated with Coloma River. I'll answer anything. I own 100% of CR Studios, the architectural firm that designed 201 Kennedy, 71 Kennedy. Okay? I purchased it from Charles Perret. Okay? I own it. 100%.
But you raised the water issue as a reason why. Can you explain why the water issue
Sure.
prevents
Yeah.
commercial?
So initially, designed by Coloma River, the way they had it is they had 2 levels of parking and then a commercial space. So you're actually going about 34 to 36 feet into the ground. Once you go past 20 feet on Kennedy Street, you're going to encounter water. So once we came on, we acquired the property, we did geotechnical testing, and we encountered water about 21 feet. Okay, so we had to get rid of one level of underground, either parking or whatnot. So what we did in this case is, instead of getting rid of, it had 21 parking spaces for that huge commercial space, if you call it. So we are actually now having 17. So we had to get rid of one level to avoid the water issue. So once we eliminated one level, now instead of 3 levels below ground, we're going 2 levels below ground, about 22 feet.
I would just say that, given that it is a mixed-use forward property, I think it's kind of a shame to miss the opportunity to have retail space there, especially since it's attractive commercial properties in the corridor. So I would ask you to consider that. I think it's important. I think it would be a missed opportunity to not do that. But I do also appreciate everyone explaining the regulatory situation here too. That my impression is that building a commercial property or a mixed-use property, they can do by right, or they can build a residential property by right. So whether or not they include a commercial property on the first floor, which is something I would like, but also would be your choice, right? And also you own the building. So I would say, I would hope that you would consider using a commercial property. I also just want to recognize that the ANC folks don't necessarily make that decision, and aren't, as far as I'm concerned, I'm aware, are not being asked to be able to decide whether there's a commercial property in the first floor, right? That's not really your call, is it?
We can make recommendations, and we are given great weight. And what great weight means is we've been afforded a voice, right, in the ongoing development. The owner of RE1 is not asking us to do that. Residents are asking us to do that.
the greatest harm here, the biggest issue here is in the sense of whether we consider this or not, so let me stand, is that we have affordable housing. We have an affordable housing project with different mixed uses, as you've heard, 60%, 80%, 120% AMI, and then 17 market rate, if I have that right. And if we submitted something that was a rejection of this, the potential rejection saying, we don't want this project at all unless it has retail. That means, zoning will consider that and potentially could say, you know what, we'll side with you. The chances of zoning doing that are not high because they only have to consider the zoning variance. Are they meeting the threshold for zoning? Yes or no? Sort of, and back to your point of, then it becomes a sort of by right situation here. So we're at a space where they could, by choice, say we've heard from the community and we will revamp our plans. The only other thing would be zoning ruling against the project in and of itself. And zoning ruling against it in and of itself means we lose the housing, we lose the project, and we have nothing there. And that's sort of just a tough spot for all of us to be in that sense. If somebody have a retailer that they know would be in this space, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just asking. Does anybody know of a person?
Well, there's been talk. Yes. No, there's been talk of an organic market, going in there since like 2018. Whether or not that's real or not is, another question. But I think that is the vision that was sold back in 2018, and that's what people are upset about losing potentially.
Got it. In my conversation, the only organic market that has been in discussion as far as Kennedy Street is on between 5th and 6th on Kennedy, if I'm wrong. That's the only organic market that is being explored as a potential to come to this area. But I'm asking that because that would be something we could present to him and say, actually, we have somebody who would take your space, and that would be an incentive. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to say, I'll do it if you have somebody for me. But I'm just asking because what I don't want it to be, and I have nothing against liquor stores, I really don't. But I don't want it to be another liquor store. People playing their numbers and going to the liquor store and hanging out by the liquor store. We suffer that for years. I just don't want that to happen.
Yeah, can I address that?
Yeah.
I want to address this very directly to the community. We actually I didn't answer your question, I realized that. It's because the cost of construction to go 3 levels lower is going to be makes the project unfeasible. That's the reason that we have to cut it. But having said that, in terms of, I want to be very honest, it's too late now. We already have completed the whole of the design. All of the approvals through the Department of Buildings have taken place. The only thing that was remaining is the zoning. That's the only thing that's remaining. And what's before the zoning are those 2 issues that he talked about. So the zoning doesn't even have any consideration. They can take the opinion, of course, of ANC to consider anything other than those 2. So for this project, I don't want to tell you everything, but I want to be very honest with you. We looked at the cost of the project, the advantage to having a mixed income community that will be viable for the project. That's the direction that we went. We couldn't, about DC right now, what's happening with the commercial spaces. It's not just this area, even if you look in downtown, commercial spaces, and this is not large enough to have a supermarket or something. So we made that decision already. So I don't want to, sell you a bag of goods that we're not going to be delivered. It's sort of too late. I apologize, but next time we will get that under consideration.
Mostly, my goal tonight, if I could accomplish one thing, is to get our elected representation to commit that they're going to ensure we have ground floor retail in these spaces.
And did you feel like you accomplished what you wanted?
No, I don't feel like I was able to accomplish that. This meeting was more of a presentation. We, as the constituents, were forced to raise our hands in order to ask a question, but the developer's representative was consistently allowed to speak without being put in an order.
I had 3 goals. One was to give community accurate information about the project. 2 was to hear concerns from everyone else, and 3 was to figure out how we move forward. I think I was successful in the first 2. I think the third, we ran out of time, and so there's more that we could be doing in terms of developing a working group that could focus on retail on Kennedy Street or ways to get them more involved with the Uptown Main Street. I think zoning is a complicated issue. I think, construction is not everybody's strong suit. I think some people heard me. I think some of them understand. I think others are lamenting, a dream lost, and there'll be a mourning process, and then we'll move on. Next steps are for the commissioners to decide how we're going to weigh in or if we're going to weigh in with zoning, and then there's a zoning hearing on April 24th.